Hi, I'm David Marchant, the founder of OffshoreAlert, which investigates participants in high-value cross-border finance with an emphasis on high-confidentiality jurisdictions. Our specialty is exposing investment fraud while it's in progress. Enjoy our content.
Hi guys, I'm Dylan Kennedy. I'm presenting this from my chilly garden on a late November afternoon. Freezing cold here today, and I'm going to be talking to you today from the desktop, obviously, about essential OSINT tools to conduct your online investigations. And I'm going to be looking at intelligence approaches, intelligence models as well, building that into your thinking of how you approach your OSINT research. Okay, I'm really looking forward to speaking to you guys in a minute from the desktop. Until then, see you in a moment. So now back at the computer desktop, and before we go anywhere with today's presentation, I strongly encourage you to critically assess any information published through internet sources. What I'd like to start with today is the challenge for all of us involved in online investigation, whether you're investigating financial crime, arms trafficking, cryptocurrency related matters, drug trafficking, cigarette smuggling, corruption, and all sorts of criminal activity. One of the big challenges that we face is that a lot of business conducted, including online, is through shell companies which are lawfully registered in different jurisdictions around the world. In some cases, the first line of defence is breached by gatekeepers who have been penalised by regulators for failing to conduct due diligence. This behaviour creates a distinct problem for the second line of defence once shell companies set up by those gatekeepers become active and start trading and making financial transactions. The challenge is then to identify beneficial ownership and to ascertain who is abusing the system. And this is where internet intelligence and investigation techniques really come to the fore in rising to this challenge. So as we progress through this presentation, what I'd also encourage is that you as a viewer consider the intelligence cycle. Now, if you're involved in investigating financial transactions, you don't really want to be waiting until that transaction hits your company and then you start scrambling to try and investigate who is behind a shell company. So here you need to start planning in advance and understanding the ecosystem of shell companies and global organised crime networks. And therefore we can properly start to be proactive and collect information and assess information on a wider scale and analyse that, and then focus our attention on tackling the right areas using a variety of open source intelligence collection tools. So regardless really of what industry you're in, whether you're in the financial sector, legal sector, or law enforcement, or even in the global logistics sector, you need to respond. And nowadays you're likely to be using artificial intelligence, creating alerts, monitoring transactions or trade movements, or you'll be screening information against sanctions watch lists. But the driver of all of that is your intelligence and investigation capability, because it's pointless having any automated system pushing out alerts and monitoring things when you don't know what you're looking for because trends shift. So then we have to start thinking about our frontline skill sets, those involved in internet intelligence and investigation. How are they actually equipped in terms of their training to go online and find the relevant information? And what does your technology look like? Now, my experience of working across different sectors, whether that's been law enforcement, the correspondent banking network, or global express logistics, the systematic problem for each organisation I've worked with has been the centralised IT approach. That means you as the researcher or the investigator do not have control over the systems put in front of you to carry out your work and conduct a meaningful investigation on the internet. Also, what's really important is then, as an investigator, your capability to actually act as a witness while you are researching information online, so that everything that you see displayed upon your screen, you are actually able to capture that data and preserve it with the highest level of digital integrity to ensure that that could be used later in a court of law and not argued that the imagery captured has in any way been manipulated or compromised. And also, what's really important for organizations is for them to be able to create an audit trail for all investigations and all of their investigators' actions. So transparency and accountability is paramount. So with all of that information in mind about the collection plans, your approach to gathering information from the internet, I'd like to introduce you to the first tool. It's called OSAP. It is an encrypted cloud-based operating system that you access from your desktop through a virtual private network encrypted tunnel. It can be installed on your individual or networked machines and can be accessed simply by selecting this icon on the desktop. This opens a launcher window which allows you to use either a single or a dual monitor setup. So this is the cloud-based, fully encrypted OSAP operating system. It is a Windows 10 desktop environment. It is a virtual machine operating from the cloud. So the connection to your desktop environment is through an encrypted communication channel displaying the contents of the desktop onto your monitor. The toolset provided within the OSAP environment allows you to carry out your role not only as an online investigator, but also as a witness to the information available on the web at that moment in time, and to capture live and dynamic intelligence and potential evidence of a crime. OSAP misattributes your digital footprint and modifies your online profile, allowing you to act in a more discreet manner. It is also fully auditable to ensure compliance with regulatory requirements, whilst also protecting your IT network from malware or ransomware attacks. So straight from the off on the OSAP platform, one of the key tools I want to demonstrate today is Cactus. Cactus is a bespoke screen capture tool, and it allows you to perform that function of you being the witness of what you're seeing on screen and to capture anything on any web page that you visit whilst conducting your online investigation. What's also really good is that it comes with the CCleaner tool built into the platform. And here the system has got pre-selected elements for optimized cleaning. You select Analyze and run the cleaner, and then you have a digitally sterile browser working environment so that you do not cross-contaminate your new investigation with any data captured on a previous investigation. And then you have a choice of 3 web browsers, so Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox and Microsoft Edge. We will start off by going to look at the Bellingcat report called Smash and Grab, the UK's money laundering machine. So it is possible to download the report simply here by selecting download. We go back to the home drive here, which is the dedicated storage area within the OSAP cloud environment. We see that the Smash and Grab report has actually been downloaded to that drive and is sat there in a PDF format, which we can now obviously open. Okay, so the report talks about 4 groups, and it highlights a previously published joint report about offshore in the UK, using Scottish limited partnerships as mechanisms for corruption and money laundering. And this highlights how many Scottish limited partnerships have been generated. and that just 23 presenters were responsible for bulk registering 2/3 of Scottish limited partnerships during the period. So what is quite clear here is that we are in the realm of a small number of presenters creating a very high volume of shell companies. So for the purpose of this presentation, I will refer to this as a shell company factory. And then as the report goes on, it does focus the attention on some of the presenters involved in creating companies and presenting documents to Companies House on behalf of unknown individuals. Here we see LAS International, and also that they work very closely with a company called Company Advice Limited, run by former staff of LAS International. And here we see another company called Conform Solutions Limited. And here we see that 2 of those 3 companies received penalties in the UK for compliance breaches early this year. Likewise, we've got another report here by Transparency International UK called At Your Service. And it discusses the topic of the role of the company formation service industry and also those of presenters and nominee directors, and how this industry is part of the problem around dirty money. And it goes on to talk about accounts and nominee directors, or people signing off the accounts for UK shell companies, and it even has a top 10 nominees list of accountants for UK companies linked to money laundering and corruption. And those names are worth having a look at, because those names do feature on documents of many, many companies, particularly companies starting in the UK. But above and beyond that, you do see those names in other jurisdictions. The report also goes on to highlight a number of addresses. It highlights them as being mailbox services or front addresses where various formation agents operate from. So overall, what we see here, by conducting the intelligence cycle and carrying out research and working with high quality investigative journalism, there is already a high intelligence yield available that you can use within your system to start feeding that monitoring and artificial intelligence machine. And from there, where your automation kicks in and starts identifying companies that are involved in transactions and flagging these up as alerts, your investigators can react more promptly and then start drilling down and looking into certain areas. And this is where you become key as a witness in what you are seeing to be able to identify these trends and then submit high quality suspicious activity reports based on a great foundation of intelligence. So here we see something from Amnesty International, and I have had the pleasure of recently working with Amnesty International and also the Centre for Investigative Journalism. So call out to the guys over there. Really, really good work they're doing. And so let's just go and have a look at this report here. It's a PDF report, and what it's looking at is a UK registered company's role in one of the largest arms deals to South Sudan. And so what we want to do is look at the nature of the company here and their role in this. And so as we see here, Amnesty International name a UK company called S Profit Limited, and it does state here, if these documents are accurate, that this could violate UK export controls. Okay, but what I'd like to do is take a jump over to Companies House and go and have a look at S Profit Limited. So what we can do now is start utilizing the Cactus tool here to capture what we're seeing. So we can just do this. There is scrollable content on the screen, so the device has recognized that, and what it does, it will auto scroll the screen and capture that image for us. Okay, that image I'll have a look at with you in a moment. Then we see the filing history tab for S Profit Limited, and again what we have here is a lot of information, and again just so that we're witnessing what we're seeing, we will capture that information. And there is a second page here as well. Again, a bit more scrollable content. So again, using the Cactus tool, I can progress my investigation and look at this information in more detail later on. I can also look at the People tab, and here we see 2 individuals here. So again, scrollable content, click in there, and voila. And we have one more tab to look at here, persons with significant control. Again, this individual here would probably be best if we again do a scrolling capture, because it's a little bit more than just what's visible on the screen. Okay, so we've quite quickly just gone through the company's house records there. Now, what I would recommend, if you're dealing with company's house, always go back to the initiation of the company. And straight away on page 2, what we're seeing here is an address that, if I go back one step to the At Your Service report from Transparency International, is a potential red flag. So what we can do here, this information here, just grab that around the screen and say thank you very much. I've just taken a screenshot of that address. Then we have initial shareholdings. Now here, this is very interesting. We see the name Ian Taylor. Now I will just grab this and take a screenshot of that. If we go back to the Transparency International UK report, here we see, and if I just grab this, the bottom name in that list is Ian Taylor. And we have the address of 43 Bedford Street in London, Office 11, also being used. So have we got a connection there between the Ian Taylor of the Transparency International UK report and the Ian Taylor listed in the S Profit Limited Incorporation document? So that would be a consideration for your ongoing investigation now, to start looking into verifying the details of Ian Taylor. So as a next step, go to Open Corporates and look at the officer's details here. So if I quickly go back to Company's House and take the name King Howard Cordero Enriquez, I would encourage this technique. First of all, look in your local jurisdiction data around any companies created there. And if you find information about the company of interest and the individuals linked to that company, next step, go and check Open Corporates to see if that individual is in any way connected to other companies elsewhere in the world. And here we see King Howard Cordero Enriquez. Now here, again, very quick overview, we see 4 different jurisdictions, a lot of registrations in the United Kingdom. However, we also see Panama and New Zealand and Cyprus. So we could maybe have a look at the company in Cyprus and the company in New Zealand, which I've opened in new tabs. So again here, the company in Cyprus, names Kohlberg Trading Limited. So we go and have a look at Kohlberg Trading Limited. Here's some information here. It does mention a home company, which is inactive, another company being in the United Kingdom. So this Cyprus company is a branch of a UK company. Here we see the directors and officers. And again, we can take a quick snapshot of this. We can have a look at the UK company. Scrolling down, our attention is drawn to the names Ian Taylor and King Howard Cordero Enriquez. So this is potentially another shell company, with one of its directors featuring on the top 10 list linked to money laundering and corruption. And that in itself could be considered a potential red flag. Just looking at the New Zealand connection, we see an address, 306 Nayland Road. So now what we can do as part of the intelligence cycle is to pivot the details of the address in New Zealand and check for further companies registered in the name of Ian Taylor, where we see here 170 results. So now I'd like to come back to the Cactus collection tool within OSAP and highlight here what it's been doing as I've been capturing screenshots. So what we see is that each screenshot creates a date and timestamp as well as a SHA-256 hash value, and it also identifies the URL where that detail was captured. These details are particularly important as from an evidential perspective, they not only document where and when information was obtained, but also preserve the digital integrity of a captured image by creating the hash value checksum. So this is really key, and this is now the power of the Cactus tool coming into play. So what we'll do next is just look back into how Cactus further ensures the digital integrity. If we go to the view files function, we see that in the home drive, Cactus creates its own folder system linked to the operation that I'm currently running. And what it does, it creates every screenshot as a master exhibit, but also as a working copy. So if I need to make any alterations or annotations to an image, I would do that to the working copy, whereas the master copy is retained for pure evidential purposes to demonstrate the raw capture at the date and time as it was seen by the investigator on their monitor at that moment in time. So the investigator can write a witness statement saying, this is what I searched for, this is what I found, this is the path that I took to get to where I found that, and to draw my conclusion that this constitutes suspicious activity. When that suspicious activity report is submitted to a law enforcement agency and they conduct a subsequent investigation, that investigation may take years to come into court. And some of the information that you have seen as an investigator in your original investigation and have captured with that level of digital integrity will be something that ultimately the law enforcement agencies will be able to draw upon at a much later date in court proceedings, where your witness statement and the evidence attached to that statement will become key to any prosecution. Now, going back to the deployment browser within Cactus, there is another really powerful feature that I'd just like to highlight here, and that is the ability to go to captured images and then being able to redact certain information from those images. And you can annotate that editing process, save that, and what Cactus does is it preserves the master, which we see here as image number 11 that was captured, and creates a working copy with the comment blurred out innocent party as image number 11 version 1, and it is allocated its own hash algorithm because the image itself has been altered due to the blurring. So these two have their own unique hash algorithms here now. Now also I can now tag that one to say that's going to be an exhibit, okay, and that one is sensitive unused. And what I can do is I can now filter these and say I do not want to include the sensitive unused, or the unused ones. I only want to include the exhibit. Puts all of that there, and I can create a report, and obviously I can do more info in here, but for the purpose of this demonstration I can create a report that is date and time stamped down to the second and produce that report into a PDF and go to the Cactus folder in the home drive, go to the reports and open that report. And this contains the details of that report. Also, we do have in the working copies that last redacted image available to us here. As we can see, that can be presented as your evidential exhibit, protecting the identity of the persons that are not subject to your investigation. So one of the things I really love about using the OSAP system is that I can now also incorporate other OSINT tools that are browser based. And so this makes our research really, really powerful when operating from within this system. So as an example, I can use Sayari Graph, which is a really powerful web-based company research tool specifically designed to identify beneficial ownerships of companies. So here we can type in the name King Howard Cordera Enriquez and simply hit return, and here it's identifying 5 entities matched against that name. Now straight away we see here 43 Bedford Street, Office 11. We also see an address in the Philippines. Now what we are seeing here as well is partial date of birth, and those two have the same partial date of birth. Here we have another one linked to Philippines and New Zealand. There are 381 records, so we could now also look by country and say we want the United Kingdom, and there's some links to the Philippines. There's many ways you can do this. And what we can do is add that individual to a graph, and Sayari Graph shows that there are 92 connections linked to that individual. And by double clicking on the individual, it is possible to expand many of the connections there. There's also some information here. This is the UK element linked to this, and here you could potentially now start working back again on Companies House to do research. So it's a very quick tool to visualize the level of company connections that an individual may have. But it's also possible to have a look at the data surrounding that individual. So here we see the names of 2 companies, and again here when they were first observed, last observed, and you can look down and see some information about the companies that are being mentioned here. You also have attributes, titles, names, identifiers, dates of birth, and references, which are all actually coming from UK Corporate Registry. Here you can also explore all that person's relationships. This is specific to the person who we've got linked to the Philippines, and we could expand this and add these details to the graph. Okay, and you could now go away and start having a look at some of that information. One of the other things you can do is also search by address. And just see down here whether we also see the name Ian Taylor anywhere featuring. So there's 165 entities. So now we can maybe look at the persons link there. And here we only see Angelique Lilly. What we see here with the New Zealand address is there are a lot of entities there. So again, what I would probably just do is go back to Google and we can do an adverse media search. So here this adverse media search doesn't find a lot, but it does go back a long way to a source that I'm aware of called nakedcapitalism.com. There's a blog written by an individual called Richard Smith, who is a recognized financial expert, and Richard now actually writes for Open Democracy. And so I would consider Richard to be a high quality source of information. But still, we shouldn't just take an individual's word just as a given. But what we can start seeing here is that I can see the word Taylor starting to jump out, and here formation agent Ian Taylor. Okay, now what we're looking for here is whether we start seeing Taylor's name in relation to Nayland Road. So here we talk about he set up a bunch of companies. By the way, the address 306 that he frequently uses, we notice that one of his nominees is called Angelique Lilly. And if we went back to Sayari Graph, there we see Angelique Lilly. Okay, and many of Lilly's 51 companies overlap with the 54 Taylor's companies. So again, this is going to be a very important document. So what I'm going to do is go back to using Cactus as the underlying tool, and I'm going to grab this. And that's the image saved there. So going back to actually our lady Angelique Elizabeth Lilly, if Richard's reports are correct, and she has a number of companies here, then we can actually have a look at them on the graph, add them to the graph, and add to the graph. And then you've got some company names very quickly. Just opening on one of the companies there, we've got Ian Taylor there again. Now what you can do with Sayari as well, that's really good here, is you can download a JPEG image of the Sayari graph chart. So this would download that JPEG and you'll see that appear here. What's also really good is that it will allow you to download a CSV. So very simply, a click of the button. Another great feature is that using the translate button, if any of the content is displayed in a non-English language, Sayari will translate that into English for you. We can also select Ian Taylor here as the center and make Ian Taylor the focus of the chart by selecting the hierarchical view button. So this is really powerful stuff. You can very quickly review your images and view the hierarchy. We can see the name Ian Taylor here. We've got links to the UK, to the US, Australia, New Zealand. So that's a very quick run through of the capabilities of Sayari Graph, and you can save this graph for later. And also one of the new features is also that you can set up projects around complex investigations over longer periods of time. So coming back to the Amnesty International report, it does highlight some of the companies allegedly involved in this shipment of arms to South Sudan. Here we see S Profits Limited. It also mentions Ukrinmash, and it goes on here to mention Ukrinmash, Ukraine, S Profit in the UK, the shipment going on to International Golden Group in the United Arab Emirates, and then onwards to the Ministry of Defence and Veteran Affairs in South Sudan as the end user. And as we can see at the top here, this is from the amnesty.org website. So now I'd like to introduce you to a further really useful OSINT tool called Panjiva. And basically this would be possible now to start typing in details of those companies and looking at their wider shipments. So by typing in Ukrinmash from in here, we can see that they're based in the Ukraine, and we can start highlighting who their potential customers are around the world. So obviously, please understand that I am not now going to show the details of any trading partners of Ukrinmash, which can be found in full detail by scrolling further down the page. Now it's also possible to Google Dork Panjiva from the outside, and you can see that the Google Dork to search the panjiva.com site from the outside is already finding some hits. And what we can then do is click on any one of those, or if you subscribe to Panjiva, you can go in and search the system for Ukrinmash. And by focusing on the shipper themselves, you can get more information here that this is coming from US trade data sources, company data from Dun & Bradstreet, etc. So you're getting access to other sources as well. So this is a really great additional tool that you can use above and beyond the other tools that I'm showing you here. So you're really able to enrich your data with a couple of subscriptions and really conduct a great level of corporate due diligence here. There are many other search features here. You can do advanced searches. We see here 57 shipments, total of 2.6 million kilograms of goods shipped. And here you have a much more advanced data set. And you can search by shipment origin, port of lading, port of unlading, the goods shipped. You can even go down here to container marks, etc. So you can really track things properly here, and even here the period. So there's a lot of information that you can really extract from this data set. This is just giving you the idea of what you can do with a tool like this. And if I just moved off piste very briefly, you could do proactive profiling. So if we were to consider from a money laundering perspective, the crypto world, and that one of the trends we've seen in recent years has been laundering through crypto mining, and that crypto miners have used mining equipment to conduct unlawful activity. Okay, so if we went down that route, and going off the top of my head, a company that produces mining equipment, Bitfury Holding, information there, and then we've got 6 shipments there. So again, I could use Cactus to capture the scrolling content and redact the relevant information. Here we have power supply systems and parts of power supply systems. Now Bitfury produce crypto mining system, and they've shipped systems to a guy, Jobadiah Weeks, in the US. Okay, so you could now be proactively researching who's buying precursor equipment to be able to mine cryptocurrencies. So here I'm just going to just try an adverse media research, and then we start seeing one result about the name Jobadiah Weeks. BitClub network creators arrested. The Department of Justice alleges a $722 million Ponzi scheme in December 2019. So this is from Behind MLM. It's another media outlet that has actually produced some really informative insights into Ponzi schemes. And here we see an image of Jobadiah Joby Weeks, and they're talking here about Ponzi schemes and scams. That's potential information there that we're just going to say, thank you very much. We'll grab that. And boom, we've got some information there that may be relevant to this inquiry that we're doing, using Panjiva as an initial source tool to conduct some proactive investigation into some trends. So if we went back to the shipment data, we see a Jobadiah Weeks of Avada in Colorado importing into the US power supply equipment from Bitfury in the Netherlands. And we know, if we conduct our research into Bitfury, we know that they produce crypto mining technology. So that has to be considered as an innovative way of using a site such as Panjiva to conduct proactive research into more wider trends of shipping and thinking a little bit outside the box to identify supply chains of precursor goods that could be misused to commit offences at a later date. The final tool I want to demonstrate today is Dark Owl Vision, a user-friendly web browser-based tool that enables you to effectively search, monitor and receive alerts when leaked data appears on the darknet. But it is also useful for conducting due diligence and wider research into strategic trends. Once you've signed into the Dark Owl Vision system, you're faced with a very simple overview with a single search bar in the middle. Here you can start by searching your keywords, and Dark Owl will identify any matches against those keywords. However, there are some filters that you can apply, so you can pre-select the areas that you wish to search. You can also add date ranges to your searches, and you can also identify when the data was crawled or hackishness. Another really helpful search is down on the left, where you can build your search function. There are already pre-edited selectors within here, so you can search for emails, credit cards, social security numbers. It will also identify recent searches, saved searches, and down at the bottom here it has templates where you can look for specific topic areas where certain search criteria have already been input from Dark Owl Vision, and this allows you to effectively search areas of the darknet that may contain topics of interest to you. A new feature here is also that you can use search blocks to make your own lists of frequently used terms or exclusions to use in your searches. So here is an example of a strategic search, and it identifies 23,029 results, and the results are presented similarly to a search engine, and it identifies here the crawl date, the domain, also the relevance to the search terms in there. Quite simply then, you can left click and this will identify obviously foreign language content, and this is possibly the publishing dates here. But what's really good is what we see here down the right hand side is that our key search terms are entered there, and it's identifying for us which keywords are hitting how many times in the document. And also really nice in the presentation is that the keywords are actually highlighted in the text. You also get the option to see some metadata around the capture of the data sources, and it is possible to download the document like that, and it will put it into a text file onto your device. Quite easily I can also save my search, which I've already done on this element here, and I can add further filters to it as I go along, as I've previously demonstrated there. So then coming back to our earlier topic, looking at the UK company S Profit Limited, a research of the Dark Owl Vision system here has found that the Organised Crime and Corruption Reporting Project also maintain a page within the darknet, and this was crawled in September 2020. And again here immediately it is drawing our attention to the name S Profit Limited, and it also identifies other companies in the immediate proximity from this that relate to further British companies here, and also a Cyprus-based company. So this is just other data around that other topic. So the dark web can quickly draw your attention to elements here, and you can then research these companies on both sides of the clear web and also the dark net using this tool, and it is all web browser based at your fingertips. So what's also really nice here is back in the top end you have the dashboard function here, and this allows you to create alerts and see the alerts that you have in place and your saved searches, and also any recent searches that you've conducted on the system. Here again in collections we have a list of the searches that we have conducted, and here you can create your new block under search blocks, a new function within Dark Owl Vision to start building those search queries to filter out noise and look in specific buckets of the darknet, and also paste bins on the clear web to start identifying that core data. And so to round off, a nice little Google Doc at the end is to look at the laundrynews.com and, for example, FinCEN files and Enabler. We can see a nice little aggregated news page here. And if we look down, the whole list of relevant documentation, there is an awful lot of information here. Great little adverse media news source. And then to round off, we can go to Transparency International and have a look at what the FinCEN files tell us about the UK's role as an enabler of corruption and money laundering and what needs to change. So I'm really hoping you've enjoyed that insight and just different thinking and certainly some really useful tools. And I would really like to thank Internet Investigation Solutions with OSAP and Sayari with the Sayari Graph tool. And also I'd really like to thank Panjiva and Dark Owl for letting me present their tools today, because I find that all of these tools, when used with innovation and also integrity, can really be a superb platform for you to conduct your role for completing due diligence or investigations on the internet.
Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to our investigative news and documents service and attending our events. For more information, visit OffshoreAlert.com.